The sun sinks below the horizon after another hot summer day in Texas, and the temperature drops to a level that makes breathing easier. Brindie Crest walks to her car that is parked on the farm that she has turned into a women's shelter years ago, looking forward to another training session at one of her gyms. Being the number 5 contender to the female featherweight boxing world title, she puts in the work that is necessary to challenge the world champion one day. 10 years ago, she had the chance to be the one at the top, and she knew that she had won the fight, but the Korean judges had given the belt to the Korean fighter Kwak Joo Lee. Last year, she had fought Kwak Joo Lee again and beat her by way of knockout, making it clear that 10 years ago the judges had made a mistake in scoring the bout. Brindie has reached her car and opens the door when she hears 3 loud cracks, a sound that rolls across the farm for a few seconds before it vanishes. She thinks that maybe an engine has misfired and that the driver should see the next available garage to let it be fixed. Brindie leaves her property, driving the narrow dirt road that leads to the main street when she sees a black SUV standing at the side, half blocking her way. She frowns. She has not expected any visitors today. She tries to pass the car carefully, not wanting to scratch it in any way, thinking about the paperwork and talks with insurance companies if she damaged it. When she moves slowly past the SUV, she turns her head to look at the driver, and what she sees makes her blood run cold. The SUV's window on the driver's side is shattered, broken glass everywhere, and inside sits a woman in uniform, her arms loosely by her side, eyes closed, her head tilted toward the door. Brindie passes by and stops, gets out of her car, and walks back to the SUV to check on the driver's condition. What she sees makes her gasp. The uniform is soaked in blood, and seeing the 3 holes in the chest of the jacket lets her understand that the cracks she had heard were not from an engine that had misfired. The insignia identify the woman as a commander, and the name on the nameplate reads Torres. Brindie makes a quick calculation. An ambulance would need about 30 minutes to arrive and another 30 minutes to a hospital. That would be about 60 minutes in total. Brindie looks at the woman. She doesn't have 60 minutes. Brindie opens the door on the driver's side as the eyes of the woman flutter open, and in the next moment, Brindie looks at the barrel of a Sig Sauer M18. The woman's eyes are unfocused. She probably sees a shadow only, a threat that has come to finish the job. Brindie makes a step back, raises her arms, and tells the woman that she has not come to do any harm. "Commander, you're badly hurt," Brindie says. "You need to get to a hospital as fast as possible." Brindie gets the soldier into her car, half carrying and half dragging her under the muffled groans of the woman. Brindie drives as fast as she can. Every now and then she looks at the soldier who drifts in and out of consciousness. She makes it to the hospital in 22 minutes, driving her car directly to the emergency entrance. She gets out of her car and sprints through the doors, calling for a doctor, making the urgency of the situation clear by screaming at every person that looks like hospital staff. They lay the soldier carefully onto the gurney and hurry her straight into the ER. Brindie follows them through the entrance and tells a nurse that she would come back in case they needed information. Then, outside of the hospital, and only now, she allows herself to tremble. She leans heavily against the fender of her car because her legs want to refuse to carry her anymore. She looks at her passenger seat, which is soaked in blood, and she wonders if the woman will make it. Brindie sits down on the driver's seat, her hands trembling as she reaches for the steering wheel. She looks at the passenger seat again, then she starts the engine and drives to the gym. Left and right and left and right. The heavy bag takes serious damage, but Brindie is not focused as her thoughts occasionally drift toward Commander Torres, who was bleeding out on her passenger seat. Half an hour into her training, Brindie stops. She can't concentrate anymore. She wonders if the injured woman has made it, and the restlessness of her mind lets her take a quick shower, dress up, and hurry to her car. She drives back to the hospital and finds it under lockdown. The nurse at the desk immediately recognizes her as the woman who brought Commander Torres 90 minutes ago, and she tells Brindie that there are a few serious-looking men in uniform waiting for her. The nurse leads Brindie to the lobby, where she sees an older man in his early 60s, in company of two younger men. The older man, broad-shouldered with silver hair and eyes of the color of the deep ocean, steps forward and stretches out his hand to greet Brindie. His handshake is firm, and he introduces himself as Admiral Patterson. He looks concerned, but his voice is deep and devoid of any emotion. "You are the woman who found Commander Torres and brought her here?" It is not a question, but stating a fact that he already knows. "Yes," Brindie answers. "I'm Brindie Crest. I found her and brought her here." "Why didn't you call an ambulance?" Patterson asks. "I saw the blood and the wounds, and an ambulance would have taken about 60 minutes to arrive at the emergency doors. I estimated that Miss Torres would have died in that ambulance before it would have arrived at the hospital." Patterson raises an eyebrow. He is surprised by the fact that a simple civilian thought about that. "You've made the right call," he says. "Doctors confirm that." "How is she?" Brindie asks. "Will she be okay?" Patterson sees genuine concern in Brindie's eyes, and he decides that it is safe to trust her with the information. "She's in surgery right now," he responds. "Her condition is critical, but she has a chance that she wouldn't have had if you hadn't made the decision to drive her here immediately." Brindie relaxes just a fraction. Then she nods. "Can I wait until they finish surgery?" she asks. "I'd like to know if she is okay." Patterson frowns. Why would this civilian want to wait for the outcome of surgery? He pauses for a few seconds before he gives his answer. "Of course, Mrs. Crest. Be my guest." The OR is pure chaos. Doctors and nurses fight a battle against time. Suddenly, the heart monitor flattens into a solid, terrifying hum. "We lost her pulse," the anesthesiologist yells, slamming his hand onto the emergency alarm. The room floods with harsh blue light as the crash cart is rolled forward. Dr. Harriet Baker doesn't hesitate. She climbs onto the surgical stool, leans directly over the patient's open chest, and puts her hands directly inside the chest cavity. She begins open heart massage, manually squeezing the cold, bruised muscle of the heart to force blood to the brain. "Charge to 200, Harriet commands, her arms straining with the rhythmic, exhausting compression. "We are not losing her on this table." As Harriet squeezes the heart, a sudden geyser of dark blood erupts from behind the left lung. The stitches on the damaged bronchus aren't the problem. The third bullet has left a hidden exit wound, tearing open the descending thoracic aorta. Commander Torres is bleeding out from the largest artery in the body, directly into her own chest cavity. "Suction can't keep up." The scrub nurse panics, the clear plastic tubes turning a violent, opaque crimson. "We're losing the field." "Blind clamp," Harriet shouts, her fingers slipping in the pooling blood as she reaches blindly behind the collapsing lung. "Give me a clamp now." She guides the curved metal instrument by feel alone, feeling for the tearing rush of high-pressure arterial blood. Click. She snaps the clamp shut. The geyser dies down to a trickle. "She's still flatlining, Harriet," the anesthesiologist warns, his voice tight. "She's been down for 4 minutes. Brain death is setting in. We need to call it." "No," Harriet snaps, her eyes blazing above her mask. "She's 37. Charge the internal paddles to 20. The nurse hands her the small, sterile paddles shaped like spoons. Harriet places them directly onto the sides of the exposed heart. Clear. Torres's chest arches off the table as the electricity surges directly through her heart. The line on the monitor remains flat. Again, 30. Clear. Another shock. The heart shudders, twitches, and then nothing. Silence hangs heavy over the room, broken only by the mechanical drone of the flatline. Harriet stares at her blood-soaked gloves, the weight of the loss crashing down on her. She draws a breath to call the time of death. Thump. On the monitor, a single jagged spike fractures the flatline. Then another. Thump, thump, thump. "Sinus rhythm," the anesthesiologist whispers, staring at the screen in disbelief. "We have a pulse. Blood pressure is climbing. 80/40. Harriet lets out a breath she feels like she's been holding for an hour. Her hands are shaking as she begins to permanently suture the aortic tear. Let's patch her up, quickly, before her body realizes what it just went through. I believe she will celebrate birthday twice a year now. The anesthesiologist looks at Harriet, and then he begins to laugh, the tension and the experience of a patient's near death falling off. The work is done. Relief is palpable. Commander Torres is stable and is transferred to ICU. The room is kept half dark, with 2 soldiers in front of the door guarding it. No one gets in or out without being checked, except hospital staff who regularly checks on Commander Torres's vitals. 6 months ago, Admiral Patterson had assigned Torres to the case of missing arsenal. It had been flagged by Petty Officer Martinez, who had found that the arriving content did not match the accompanying documents. Sometimes a few rifles had been missing. On other occasions, it had been ammunition. Explosives went missing, RPGs, all without a trace. Martinez had reported to his superior, and from there it had gone up the command chain until it had reached Admiral Patterson. Torres had quietly tracked the way weapons and ammunition took, but she hadn't found any irregularities. From loading the trucks to unloading them at their destination, there hadn't been any irregular stops where parts of the load could have disappeared. Nevertheless, every now and then equipment disappeared. It was on a Tuesday morning when Torres noticed something that made her take a closer look. She had positioned herself opposite the facility with a clear view on the loading dock, her binoculars pressed against her eyes. 2 men carried crates that contained rifles, and their posture signaled that the crates were heavy. After they had loaded 4 crates into a truck, they came back with a 5th, and this time their backs looked straighter when they carried it. Through her binoculars, Torres read the number on the crate. Once the truck reached its destination, she wanted to check the content and compare it to the provided documents. That's when one of the men noticed a reflection that came from the SUV parked on the opposite side. He wasn't able to name what it was, but he saw that a driver was looking their way. He made a call, and 10 minutes later, Torres noticed a motorbike stopping behind her, keeping a distance, waiting. Torres knew that she had been noticed, and she started the engine and drove away. The moment she moved, the motorbike followed her. Torres drove for 20 minutes looking in the rearview mirror every now and then, checking if the motorbike was still there. It was. Then she made the fatal decision to leave city streets. She turned into a narrow dirt road and stopped her car at the side, her Sig Sauer ready just in case. She wanted to interrogate the motorcyclist who had followed her all the way up to the dirt road. However, what Torres had not accounted for was that the driver of the motorbike already had a gun in his hand. He stopped beside the driver's door and fired 3 shots through the shattering glass. Torres had no chance. The monitors beep in a steady rhythm. Surgery has been successful, but Tamara Torres has not yet opened her eyes. Anesthesia is still in her system, and doctors expect her to wake up soon. That's what Admiral Patterson is waiting for. Dr. Baker approaches him and Brindie in the lobby. "Admiral," she begins, "Commander Torres is stable for now. I want her to be transferred to a military hospital," Patterson says. "I do not recommend a transfer," Baker replies. "Torres is not in a condition for a transfer. She needs to stay here for a week at least." Brindie watches the Admiral's face. It shows that he doesn't like Dr. Baker's recommendation, but he trusts her expertise enough, at least for the moment. Now that Commander Torres is out of imminent danger and is being cared for, Brindie doesn't need to stay any longer. She turns to the Admiral to say goodbye, but before she does, she wants to hand him a business card with her contact information. She opens her bag, and her cheeks flush a deep red. Inside her bag, she finds Commander Torres's Sig Sauer M18. She picks it up with 2 fingers, like the dangerous tool that it is, and pulls it out of her bag. "I believe this belongs to Miss Torres," Brindie says, and she holds it toward Patterson, who takes it with the care it requires. He checks the chamber and the magazine, and then he says, "Thank you for bringing it to me." Then Brindie reaches into her bag again and hands the Admiral the business card that she initially intended to give him. "In case you may have any further questions," she says. "I need to go now. My children are waiting for me." Patterson nods, and Brindie leaves the hospital. 7 hours later, Commander Torres's eyes flutter open. She takes in the environment, hears the beeping of the monitors, and tries to remember why she is lying in a hospital bed. She tries to sit up, but the pain forces her straight back into a lying position. A nurse appears to check on her, and when she sees that Torres's eyes are open, she rushes back through the door and informs the Admiral, who has been waiting in the lobby the whole time. He enters the room in company of the nurse, and his face finally shows relief. "Welcome back, Commander," he says. "How do you feel?" "As if I was shot," Torres replies. She tries a smile, but it doesn't reach her eyes. "The woman," she continues, "the woman who brought me here. You were lucky," Patterson says. "This woman has a brain. You wouldn't have made it if she had called for an ambulance. She drove you to the hospital personally." "Is she still here?" Torres asks. "I want to talk to her. I need to thank her. She has gone home about 6 hours ago. She left when the doctor said that your surgery had gone well. She left me a business card. Do you want me to call her?" "Yes, please call her. She can come anytime. I won't go anywhere, I suppose." When Brindie had come home, Julie had been waiting for her. "We need some groceries," she said. "Let's go." Julie walks to the car, opens the passenger door, and shrieks. What in God's name has happened here? Brindie tells her the whole story and suggests to take the blue pickup truck that Julie uses to drive. Julie is shocked. She doesn't know what to say. Dinner is quieter as usual. Only the kids' chatter disturbs the silence, and after they went to bed, Julie wants to hear the story of the shooting from Brindie again. At 10 p.m., Brindie's phone buzzes. Unknown number. She takes the call anyway. It is Admiral Patterson. "Good evening," he begins. "I apologize for the disturbance. Commander Torres is awake. She wants to see you. Are you available tomorrow? Around 9 a.m.? "Yes," Brindie answers. "I'll be there." "Thank you," the Admiral replies. "See you tomorrow." The following morning, Brindie arrives at the hospital 15 minutes before 9. Admiral Patterson is waiting in the lobby, and when he sees her arrive, he approaches her with his hand stretched out for a greeting. His face has lost the tension that it had shown the day before, and he actually manages a warm smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Crest," he says warmly. "Good to see you." "Good morning, Admiral. How is Miss Torres?" "She's alive thanks to you," Patterson answers without ceremony. "She is stable, but she can't be transferred as for now. We can see her in a few minutes." They wait in silence until a nurse approaches them and tells them to follow her. Patterson and Brindie walk side by side behind the nurse along the corridor until they reach a door that is being guarded by 2 armed Navy personnel. They straighten their posture when Patterson arrives. The Admiral opens the door for Brindie and lets her walk into the room first. Commander Torres turns her head, and seeing the civilian woman, she manages a weak smile. "You are the one who drove me here?" It hasn't been a question, but more like stating a fact. Then she continues, "I owe you my life. If you hadn't made the right choice, I wouldn't be here. Words are not enough, but they are all I can offer at the moment. Thank you." Then she turns to Patterson. "Can I have a minute alone with Mrs. Crest?" The Admiral nods and leaves the room. "I heard you have 2 children." Torres begins a conversation, and Brindie nods. "I have 2 children too, 2 girls, twins, Nadia and Nastia. They are 6 years old. If I had died in that car, they would have been alone." Torres closes her eyes for a moment and takes a long, labored breath. "You are the reason my children still have a mother. That's another reason to thank you." Torres pauses, takes another deep breath, and continues. "My husband died 4 years ago. Heart attack. It wasn't easy to get through the days with 2 babies who needed my full attention. On some days I was on the brink of giving up." "But you didn't," Brindie responds. "I don't know anything about your circumstances, but I am sure you did a great job. Your kids are doing fine. I know from the way how you talk about them." Brindie and Torres talk for more than 30 minutes. Brindie tells her about her life, her past, Miu and Chuki, her wife, and before she leaves, Brindie says that she would visit again if Miss Torres allowed that. The commander smiles and nods. "I would like that," she says. Brindie leaves the room and nearly bumps into a cart that is being pushed toward the door by a nurse who wears a face mask. Brindie apologizes. She turns to leave as the nurse pushes the cart through the door. Brindie stops. Something doesn't seem right. She turns her head, and through the closing door she sees again what she has noticed before: the heels. Nurses don't wear heels! She immediately opens the door and enters the room again. She sees the nurse holding a knife that absolutely doesn't belong to medical equipment. "Stop!" Brindie shouts. The nurse turns around, surprised. She has come for a quick and clean assassination. She has not accounted for a civilian to interfere. The fake nurse walks toward Brindie. First things first, eliminate the civilian threat, then finish the job. Her knife cuts through the air and slices Brindie's right forearm open. Commander Torres watches in shock, unable to help Brindie. The fake nurse closes the gap between Brindie and herself, and she thrusts her arm forward. The blade sinks deeply into Brindie's body just below the ribs. The assassin smiles, a smile that reaches her eyes, but it fades as Brindie catches the wrist and keeps the hand in place that holds the knife. Then Brindie swings her left arm. It's a lightning-fast punch that the fake nurse doesn't see coming. The fist explodes at the nurse's chin, spinning her head around viciously. Brindie has delivered her most effective punch, the left hook, the same punch that had knocked out Kwok Ju Lee in their rematch bout. The assassin is out cold before she reaches the floor, tipping over the cart. The equipment clatters to the floor with a noise that is loud enough to alert the guards at the door. They storm into the room, weapons drawn. "Freeze!" one of the guards shouts. Brindie slowly turns around to face him, her hand holding her belly where the knife is still in, bleeding profusely. She opens her mouth to speak, but coughs instead, spitting blood onto the linoleum. Then she closes her eyes and collapses to the floor. "Call a doctor for Mrs. Crest," Commander Torres says, shock still audible in her voice, "and secure that piece of trash that has disguised as a nurse, and inform the Admiral." Chaos unfolds within the minute. Brindie is being taken to the ER. Admiral Patterson storms into Torres's room while he is on his phone barking orders, and a real nurse checks on Commander Torres and says that everything is fine with her. The nurse leaves the room. Patterson stays. "She took the knife that was meant for me," Torres says. "She has saved my life twice within 24 hours. Torres shakes her head. "It's a miracle. Is she some kind of guardian angel?" "That I don't know," Patterson says. "What I do know is that Mrs. Crest makes good decisions, and she definitely has an eye for details. She noticed the shoes on the nurse, and she decided to check on her. That saved your life. If she makes it, I want her to be in my room," Torres suggests. "Not only for company, but to keep her safe. I assume that she now is a target too." "You may be right," the Admiral agrees. "I will take care of it." "She has 2 kids," Torres continues. 6-year-olds like mine. I think the 4 of them would get along well. Mrs. Crest must survive. Has her family been contacted yet?" "Yes," Patterson answers. "Mrs. Crest is on her way." A few hours later, Brindie, heavily sedated and with bandages around her forearm and belly, is being rolled into Commander Torres's room. The brakes on the wheels click into place. Torres looks over to the woman in the bed beside her, and the word "sorry" is written all over her face. A commotion outside lets her turn her head towards the door. "Where is my wife?" Chuli asks. "I want to see her." The guards at the door physically block access to the room. "Stay back," he orders. "This is a secured area." "I don't care. My wife is inside. I demand to see her." At this moment, Admiral Patterson reaches them. "Are you Mrs. Crest?" he asks. Chuli nods. Patterson gives the guard a sign. He steps aside and lets Chuli and Patterson pass. Chuli enters the room and finds Brindie unconscious. Her eyes move to Torres, then to Patterson. "What happened?" she asks. "She got stabbed," Torres answers. "She saved my life. Twice." She pauses. Then, She will be okay. The surgeons are very capable." If Torres's words gave comfort, Chuli's face wouldn't show it. Then the Admiral speaks. "What did you find, Commander?" he asks, being fully aware that this place is in no way safe to discuss the mission. But after 2 attempts to kill Torres, he can't wait any longer. "This is urgent. The faster he gets to the bottom of it, the faster he can end it." "Nothing disappears on the road," Torres answers without giving away what she is actually telling the Admiral. "The crates are not fully loaded when they hit the road." Patterson nods. He understands. Someone in the depot is into some shady business and willing to kill for it. Someone in the depot will have a very bad day very soon. He will make sure of it. "Thanks," Patterson says. "I will increase security. 2 armed specialists will stay inside the room in addition to the ones outside." Commander Torres's eyes grow big. "Seriously? Inside the room? With 2 female patients?" The Admiral considers the question. Then he says, "You're right. I'll send 2 female specialists." Chuli barely has listened to the conversation. Her focus is on Brindie until Torres speaks directly to her. "You have 2 kids?" Chuli is confused. "How does she know?" She nods slowly. "If you want, you can bring them next time." Admiral Patterson frowns. 2 kids in the room add a layer of safety risk that he wouldn't want to take. But when he looks at Torres, she closes her eyes and opens them again, making him understand that she wants his approval. He gives a small nod that nobody would have noticed if they hadn't looked closely. Chuli stays until Brindie opens her eyes, and a sigh of relief escapes her mouth. Torres hears it, and she turns her head to Brindie. "Welcome back, soldier," she says, smiling. Brindie looks at her, eyes still unfocused. "Are you all right?" she asks. "Yes," Torres replies. "Thanks to you, but I should be the one asking. And then, you have a beautiful wife." "Yes, I know," Brindie says, and Chuli's face turns red. A nurse enters the room, and she declares that the visitors must leave now. Chuli bends over and kisses Brindie. "I'll see you tomorrow," she says. "Bring the kids," Torres adds. "I'm sure they want to see their mother too, and honestly, I want to get to know them too." Chuli smiles, and Brindie nods. "Bring Mew and Chucky tomorrow, and tell them that Mommy is okay, and that she loves them." Chuli nods and leaves the room. Admiral Patterson has acted fast. The fake nurse has been taken to a secured facility and has been interrogated thoroughly. Patterson has explained to her the situation she is in and which option she has: cooperate and receive a reduced sentence, or do not cooperate and face the full force of the law. In any case, attempting murder on an active officer is a federal crime, and depending on her decision, it will have a different outcome of her trial. Prison time is guaranteed, but she has it in her own hands for how long she will remain behind bars. The fake nurse weighs her options, but only for a second, and then she sings like a bird. Patterson orders her to call whoever she is required to call and inform them about a successful execution. The phone call shall create a fake safety for those involved, and it shall prevent them from destroying evidence. Only 1 hour later, special forces raid the warehouse. Several persons are arrested, and the missing rifles and ammunition from the latest transfer are retrieved. All people involved face federal charges, and they will not be seen on the streets for a very long time. Intelligence had warned about possible terrorist attacks. There had been hints that pointed to a hospital as a target, but the threat was eliminated before execution. The FBI raided an apartment later, and several more suspects were taken into custody. While searching the apartment, rifles were found that matched missing ones by serial number. Besides those missing equipment, they found several sheets of paper that showed timelines and targets hidden under stacks of books. Admiral Patterson informs Commander Torres about the successful arrests. Her mission is a success even though she couldn't participate in the final act, but at least she is safe now, and so is Brindie. The following day, the hospital room is filled with the laughter of children. Chuli has brought Miyu and Chuki, and Commander Torres's children are visiting her mother. The 4 children find a connection to each other instantly, and Miyu and Chuki mistake the identical twins from time to time, which makes them laugh out loud. Admiral Patterson arrives in the afternoon. "This was obviously a dangerous mission," Brindie says. "Yes," Patterson answers. "It was, and there was only one person that I could trust it with." He continues, makes a pause, and then turns to Commander Torres. "My daughter." Brindie's eyes go wide, and then she turns her head towards Torres. The commander nods and says, "Thank you. Thank you for saving me. If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have been able to tell my father the truth." She says it without giving away classified information. "If you want," she continues, "you can visit us with your kids. I think my girls would love that." The twins nod solemnly, and Miu and Chuki jump in excitement. "That would be nice," Brindie says. "I would like that, and it seems my girls like that too." Over the next few months, Torres and Brindie visit each other whenever Torres' schedule allows. There are sleepovers, and Torres is impressed how Brindie manages her gyms, the shelter, and on top of that, 2 active girls. "I have my wife to manage with the girls," Brindie says, "and she helps with the gyms and the shelter too. I can't take all the credit for it." 9 months later, a black SUV drives onto Brindie's property and stops 20 feet away from the main house. Chuli, who is outside watering the plants, notices the government plates and she becomes nervous. She calls for Brindie, who is preparing lunch in the kitchen. Looking through the kitchen window, she also has noticed the car, and while she wipes her hands on a kitchen towel, she sees the 4 people stepping out of the car. Her face lights up when she recognizes Admiral Patterson, Commander Torres, and her children. Usually only the commander visits with her children, and she wonders why her father has come today too. Brindie steps out of the house and greets her visitors warmly. The children immediately ask for Miu and Chuki, and they run into the house to find them playing in Chuki's room. Admiral Patterson steps forward, and he stops 3 feet away from Brindie. In his hand, he holds a box that measures about 5 by 3 by 2 inches. He opens it. When he begins to speak, his voice changes from warm to formal. "It is an extraordinary honor to present the Department of the Navy Distinguished Public Service Award today on behalf of the Department of the Navy. This award is the highest civilian recognition that the Secretary of the Navy can bestow. Mrs. Crest, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your service to our nation. Mrs. Crest has distinguished herself through profound sacrifice and selfless dedication. In grateful recognition of her service, Brindie Crest is hereby awarded the Department of the Navy Distinguished Public Service Award." Brindie's eyes widen. She hasn't expected this, and she hasn't asked for it. I don't," she stutters. "You've earned it," Torres says as Admiral Patterson hands the box over to Brindie. "You put your life on the line without hesitation when you had every reason not to, and you helped solving a case of national security. I have never met a person who showed as much courage as you did when you stepped into that hospital room. This award is just a simple token to honor your bravery. We owe you so much more." Brindie is speechless, and her eyes begin to fill. "Looks like we have a hero in the house now," Chuli says, smiling, and she lays her arm around Brindie's waist. Brindie accepts the medal, and she manages a smile through her tears, and then she invites her guests to have lunch with them. Admiral Patterson, his daughter, and the twins stay until evening, have dinner at Brindie's table, and leave soon after. Brindie and Chuli remain in the kitchen while Miu and Chuki go to Chuki's room to continue playing. Brindie opens the box, looks at the medal and the pin, and shakes her head in disbelief. Then she turns to Chuli and smiles. She saved a life. She helped solve a case. She didn't do it for recognition. She didn't do it for the medal. She did it because it was right. She did it without thinking about her own safety, and she did it without thinking about what to gain from it. If this story kept you entertained, give it a like. And if you like to listen to the beginning of Brindie's stories, click the video that appears at the bottom. See you there. The narrator's voice and the pictures are AI generated. The script, however, is not. I write my stories myself. I'm not a native English speaker, so there may be mistakes in grammar.